Well, been absent from YouTube for a while. I wanted to talk about this Kabuki theater on regarding the debt ceiling and all the stuff that's happening. Haven't it's so frustrating. I haven't. I just haven't had the energy to do it, but I felt the need today to let you know that a lot of mainstream Democratic voters, people that would normally vote Democrat, are basically fed up with all the bullshit. Just as much probably as the Tea Party folks are. And of course, they've gone completely off the rail at this point, and you can basically see that by their candidates that they're choosing, which are essentially basically a bunch of right-wing nutcases, in my opinion. But as I say, that's just my opinion, and sometimes you have to get it out there, point blank. So that's essentially what I'm doing here today. And there was a pretty good article by Mike Whitney, regarding this entire Kabuki stuff going on regarding the debt ceiling. I'll read you some excerpts from it and you can make your own mind up about it. Barack Obama stormed out of a meeting with Republican leaders on Wednesday, that was last week, of course, when negotiations broke down over raising the debt ceiling. And according to one report, the usually unflappable Obama unloaded on House Majority Leader Eric Cantor, addressing him down in front of his colleagues. Now, here's a blurb from an article by the Time magazine, Joe Klein. He lit up Cantor like he has never been lit up, said one Democrat who described Obama as telling the Republican leader that he would veto any short-term bill that Cantor sends him. And then the president barked at Cantor, "Don't call my bluff." The president of the United States monstered down, this is Klein talking here, on Representative Eric Cantor last week. And so it is, so this is Klein talking, remember, this is Klein talking of Time magazine. So this is so refreshing on so many levels. Cantor has been using this crisis to undermine his leader, John Boehner, the orange guy, by playing the Tea Party / Grover Norquist recalcitrant card. The boy badly needed someone to get up in his face, and Barack Obama, of all people, apparently did, telling Cantor in no uncertain terms that he'd veto any vote, any short-term deficit ceiling fix, or indeed any plan that would not include revenue increases. This was this article entitled by Joe Klein, Cantor, taking Cantor to the woodshed. You can read it over at Time magazine if you're inclined to do so. So what's this all about? Well, basically, it is just political theater and nothing else. Are we supposed to be cheered by the fact that Obama finally found the spark and passion that liberals have been hoping for to see for 3 more years now? He certainly never got mad when workers were stripped of their collective bargaining rights in several states, and when the GOP-led Congress stopped him from shutting down America's torture gulag at Guantanamo, or when innocent women and children were killed in one of many errant bomb attacks in Pakistan and Afghanistan. But now he's pissed off because some Republicans won't let him raise the debt ceiling and push through his savage $4 trillion cuts to public services and entitlements. Give me a break. Look, Obama's goal is the same as the Republicans: to slash public spending as much as possible so more capital can be diverted to the wars and Wall Street. I mean, this should be evident by now. Period. Look what happened to, look how he railroaded Elizabeth Warren on this consumer protection agency that she was supposed to head. Yeah, this is another cave-in, and it is basically, I mean, you can just go down your little check marks right down the line. When will traditional Democrats, people who have voted traditionally Democratic, okay, when will they finally have enough? Because I had enough a long time ago. I voted for this guy just like many people did because the prospect of having, McCain and Palin in the bully pulpit, and that's all it is, basically, because this country is no longer being run by elected representatives, it's run by corporations. So yeah, that scared me a little bit, and now we have this fringe element out there, and it's just getting from bad to worse, basically. So now Democrats are trying to measure themselves up against complete lunatics in the Republican Party. And then again, the electorate is supposed to say, well, we have to vote for the lesser evil. Well, personally, you know what? I'm done with it. Because either the end will come quickly, in which case the change will happen sooner, okay, and that won't involve Obama, or it will happen slowly and torturously. The sooner the American people wake up that they've been had, the better. I mean, that's basically my standpoint today, because I am at the point where I believe that in terms of our elections, at least at the national level, okay, there is not going to be any change at the ballot box at all. Everything is already rigged from the start. And if you still think that you're living in a democracy, or in a republic for that matter, you've got to do some research and be honest with yourself and say, wait a minute, this doesn't fit anymore. There's something really, really wrong here. And some of us pointed this out years ago, when we said, we're all basically, in this boiling water, slowly boiling water situation, where you don't really realize what is happening because everything is happening incrementally and it's being intensified ever so slowly over many years. This is not like well, of course, 9/11 happened, and that's when things got ratcheted up in terms of this repressive domestic policy. But this has been going on for quite some time. So it wasn't just 9/11. This is a huge economic plan by the global financial elites to essentially crush the middle class in the developed nations, while at the same time exploiting workers and employees in third world nations for the benefit of the few and not for the many. And what we're witnessing today, and in case you haven't read The Shock Doctrine by Naomi Klein, I think you should read it, because this is precisely what is happening now on a global scale. And as Michael Hudson, the economist Michael Hudson pointed out in one of his recent articles, what is crashing down on Greece is basically a sort of foreplay as to what is going to come to the United States of America, because the same thing is going to happen here. Now, we all realize we have a problem with the deficit that we have a huge deficit. And most of us also realize that these deficits were not largely brought about by social programs or entitlement programs. In fact, Social Security has absolutely nothing to do with the deficit. Nothing. But most of us are smart enough to realize, even Ron Paul supporters are smart enough to realize, that it is these continuous wars and our military budget which are eating up 52% of our revenues. 52%. And for what? So that a few rich guys up at the top can get even richer, so that defense contractors, can basically privatize everything. And I'm not even going to go into it because it's just too damn disgusting. So, people have a right to get mad at all this, because we're all being railroaded here. Our so-called representatives no longer represent us. And I realize that ranting and raving about it is not going to make a difference. But voting in the two-party ticket during the next election is also not going to make a difference. What is happening now, and all the groundwork that has been laid for this police state, this kind of a fascist undertaking from the corporations, that took 30, 40 years to happen. So the reversal of that is not going to happen overnight. It's going to take a long time and hard work, and people like me, over 50 years old, are never going to see these results in our lifetimes. But we have to keep fighting for it, just like our forebears did. Because if not, our children and the generations that come after us are going to be completely screwed. What these financial global elites are setting up is essentially a feudal system which is no better than the 18th century. This is what we're headed towards. And there's got to be opposition to this. Even if you just make a small little difference and instill in people that this is not something normal. This is not the way it's supposed to be. Like they tell you on television. Oh, well, or like Obama says now. Oh, well, you know what? We all have to share in the sacrifice. Well, who the hell is sacrificing? It isn't Obama and his class. It isn't the wealthiest of the top elites. And anybody that tells you, if you just lower corporate taxes some more so that they essentially pay zero, which some of them actually do pay zero, and then they're going to create jobs here in the more or less developed nations, okay, you've got to do a head check. This is all about finding the lowest common denominator in terms of wages, which will eventually end up in slavery. This is essentially what it boils down to. So I guess, there aren't too many people here in America who have actually felt that pain, who think they can still get along as long as nothing happens to them personally, maybe just one family member or something. Well, we can help them out and take them in. The real unemployment rate, people, is probably close to 20% in America. And what they're telling you on television in terms of this 9% crap is total bullshit. So, I guess we're going to go down the Argentina road. And And massive protests and so on, that's a tricky thing too. Because if they aren't covered on TV, nobody in the rest of the world would even know they happen if they happen here. Just like only some protests in other countries are covered on our American television, and selectively so. And I'm not even going to go into this whole Murdoch bullshit. I mean, our own media is just as corrupt as the ones in the UK. I think what people need to realize is that we're in this for the long haul. This isn't just about the next election. This is about changing people's mindsets, and that's very hard to do when you've got this entire mass media spectrum out there that works against all of that, and which is constantly dumbing people down, basically. Keep them entertained so that they don't know what's happening and that the rug is being pulled off underneath them. In every society when that happens, and it's not the first time, and it's not unique to America, there will be what you would call either a flashpoint, or a critical mass point to where the discontent can no longer be ignored. And we're right at the edge of this now. The edge might last for 10 years. Who knows? This is not something, anybody can predict. But history works in cycles, and not every historical event is going to be exactly the same as it happened before. There are going to be variances, but the underlying mechanisms for a police state and for full-fledged fascism are very definitely in place here in America today. Whether this is going to be full-blown or whether it's just going to be completely ignored. And you have to remember, during fascism in all these countries, that includes Germany, Italy, and, Argentina and Chile and all these other nations, there were still a lot of people who just lived their lives perfectly normally, as long as they didn't speak up, and as long as they still had jobs. So on the surface, everything might go along just fine, and 50% of the population will never even realize what happens, unless, of course, bombs start dropping from the sky or something. But people aren't going to be too interested in 10% of the population being imprisoned for political views or whatever. So don't be too jubilant about what's going on, because it's a slow process, and we live in dangerous and dark times.